Welcome to The Aftermath, a podcast that rips the Band-Aid off the collective scars of divorce, custody battles, and the trauma of family drama. Kendra Reiber and Mick Smith pull back the curtain and explore stories that put the heart-wrenching puzzle pieces together with inspiring stories, notable experts, and actionable tips. Let the healing begin. Is Mick, the Doctor of Digital, and the co-host, Kendra, the legislative advocate. How are you today, Kendra? How you doing?
I am wonderful. I'm really excited about this conversation. It seems like from our listeners that they were really interested in hearing about how they can get involved and make some changes. So that's what we're going to talk about today.
So we're going to do something a little bit different, I guess. That's what you're saying?
Yeah.
All right. We're going to talk about legislation because we have had questions. People say, I don't know what to do. I don't know who to talk to. I don't know how to go about doing these things. So we're going to have a special session here on legislation and how do you go about doing this and what kinds of things you can do. So let me give you suggestions. Number one, there's a really great site, usa.gov, a site that goes to how to contact your elected officials. And this really is comprehensive. It goes from everywhere from the White House to your local representatives, your local community, and everything in between. That is state, county, and what have you. So that's a really great resource. If you simply don't know who your elected officials are, don't be surprised. A lot of us don't, unless you're a person who is really an advocate like me and a fanatic who I just tell people I was raising the kid and I said, I'm going to vote no matter what. I said, it's dog catcher. I'm still voting. So you have to be aware of all these things, what you have a primary, a general, and all those kinds of things. So anyway, if you don't know, contact your elected officials and get involved. I also wanted to mention here, National Parents Organization is a phenomenal resource, and we did have a representative on the show. They are phenomenal, and they give 7 steps, like, what do I do right away? Because what we have seen, of course, is that with 50 states and different legislative advocates and legislative outlets, there's complexity there. They're definitely local, state, federal, and what have you. But here are 7 things advocated by the National Parents Organization, which has really helped. First of all, this is what you have to do to start. Communicate with your co-parent. I know it sounds obvious, but if you're co-parenting, you've got to communicate and keep the lines of communication open. Another thing is work on yourself. Now, this strikes us, a lot of us as parents, odd because we're so much used to sacrificing, looking out for our kids, but you have to work on yourself. And that's really important because the child coming back someday, you've got to be healthy and ready. Mediation, it keeps decision making in the parent's hands. So look for a mediator, which is sort of a pre-step before you get into formal and official things and documents. So look for a mediator. Also, there's collaborative and amicable divorce processes that are in place, and that is people in your local community who you may be able to find. And this is going to say the last step because all this is before the last step. That's why it's important. Also, some family therapists on the show. We have had some therapists on there, very helpful. And this might be something that you can do before you get to the more serious things. Co parent coaching. So, there also are coaches now that are also helping with co parenting. So, separate households, but co parenting. And last but not least, and this is why I applaud the NPO, National Parents Organization, courts should be a last resort, the last one that you go to. Try all of these things before that. And this is the thing when I tell people, I said, read the fine print because by the time you get to court, you know what it says in the fine print, very small? You have just given custody over to the court. And so where you are trying to get custody, whether that's physical or legal, and the other parent is, you've really given custody over to the court. So if you don't like what they're doing, sorry, folks, it's the last resort. So you want to keep those things in mind. 7 tips I think are really helpful in addition to working on legislation and getting in contact with your elected officials. So those are my things, but maybe you have something to add, Kendra.
No, I think that's absolutely great, Mick, and I agree with you. Once gets involved, it's very hairy and it's taken out of your hands. And from example, I know I was in court for 3 years and spent $150,000 and have gotten nowhere. What I did learn, though, through the National Parents Organization is the laws have not changed since the 70s, maybe even earlier than that in some states. But basically, the law is that one person gets custody and one person gets visitation. Now, as parents, when you were married, you both had custody, you both had equal decision making rights, and you both had visitation with your children at the same time. So it's kind of screwy. So it's kind of time to change some laws. So don't be afraid. Like you said, Mick, reach out to your local representative and create some awareness. And don't be afraid to talk to them. They're just normal people like you and I. They want to hear about what isn't right, what needs change. Most of the states are aware of this situation and that it needs to change. So, but speak to your local rep. And if you can't find them, you can always go on the National Parents Organization website and go to the About section. And they actually will have your chapter listed if you click on your state, and you can contact that National Parents Organization president or vice president or chair and get in contact with your local representative because I'm sure they know who it is or where to send you.
And if And it's important to go local too. This is a thing that's often a misunderstanding. People say, I'll go to the top. Well, the thing is, at the top, it takes a long time for it to break down to where you actually live. And some years ago, it's a funny story. A guy ran for mayor of New York City on just trying to fix the potholes. I go, "What is that?" It's a strange and bizarre platform, but his point is local. Well, where are you driving every day? You're driving on your local streets. That's where the potholes are. So this is kind of the equivalent. The potholes are right where you live. So often what you want to do is get your local representative because you have more power. There's fewer people and you actually have more power locally than you do when it comes to the entire country. There's 350 million people in the country.
Yeah, that is very true. You wanna start local, and to your point, if you go in thinking you're going to change the law within a few months, it's not gonna happen. This is a long term, it's probably not even going to affect you as it will, and benefit your kids and your grandkids in
Mhm.
changing the law because that's really how long it takes to get a bill passed, and I'll go through that here in a little bit. But I think something else you can do is if you join with a national parents organization, I know they usually have a committee around rewriting the bill. Now, rewriting the bill, you're going to need a professional to help you with that. And it's not going to come from anybody like you or I, Mick. and but when
Yes.
they start to write the bill, they need people to review it and edit it and read it through and make sure that it makes sense. And you can volunteer to be on that committee as well. Now, the bill can be about 180 pages, so it's pretty long. It's a pretty intense cycle of getting a bill passed. You can also give your testimony to the state house. Tell your story. Tell them why you want the law changed. Speak up. But, volunteer to speak if you like doing that. You can also raise awareness. And first thing comes to mind is easy social media, right? Everybody's on social media. Raise awareness of your situation and just share what is happening locally in your law. If you're on that committee with the National Parents Organization or any other organization or association that is trying to get a bill passed to prevent, custody issues and custody battles, just share what they're sharing with you so that you're educating the community. That's a huge help right there. Just education.
And the idea of legislation too is that we wanted this to be good timing because most people are not aware legislative sessions were out of session. Now they're coming into session. So now is the time really. And California had a bill because I'm in California. Last session, it died. Now it's going to be reintroduced.
Same thing happened in Ohio. We had a bill, we were so far down the path, we had a number on it, and now we have to start all over. New number, everything. So start back at square one because it's new committee. And you're right. And what that means is we've elected in new officials, right? In
Mhm.
November, and they started in January. And
Yes.
so now we have to educate them on what we're trying to do. So the bill kind of starts again. So walking through that, there's about 7 steps that it takes for a bill to be passed into law. So, first, the legislator needs to become aware of the issue. And so, again, that starts by reaching out to your local rep, like you were talking about. Then we have to draft the bill. That's what I was talking about. You can help edit it, you can help finesse it, you can read through it, you can proof it. Even though there's a proofing committee in the state, you definitely want to read through it if you have, an interest in it. So, and that could be 180 pages. That could take months. Then you propose the bill. Then after it's proposed, then they will give you a bill number. So ours was House Bill 508. Now we get a new one because it's being reassigned, and I'm sure, Mick, you will have a new one as well, and we'll be sharing that.
Yep. We had 166. Now it's going to be going again. So we're back in the cycle again. And I was going to just jot here, I'll just jump in for the second. We had a long, long paragraph that was about 2 pages long with no paragraphs, just one long paragraph. And that was the bill. It said that it definitely needs to be proofed. You can't understand it. It's hard to make heads and tails out of what the heck they were even voting on.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, it has to be pretty precise. So once the number's given, then it goes into committee to review. So what does that mean? That means that it's going to involve public hearings. There's going to be several hearings probably set within several months. They're going to want to hear the people that are for the bill and the people that are against the bill. And that gives the public a a vote, a stance, their voice to be heard. And Mick, I think I want to come back to that because that's a huge thing where if people are speaking, you're making a movement, right? So they're giving the opportunity of the public to come in and tell their story and why they want the bill passed or why they don't want it passed. And that's huge. I don't think people realize you can be that connected to make that movement. Then once the then once you go through that, then it'll be debated on, obviously within committee, and they might amend the bill. They might send it back and ask the legislative team to amend that bill and make some changes in order to get it passed, or it might be discharged. They might just say, we're not going to make any changes at this time. Hopefully, we got another 4 years. We'll be able to get these bills passed through in California and Ohio. Once they're voted on, then in the House, in the state, it goes to the Senate and they will then vote and look at the bill and to pass it into law.
They often call that's the markup period because they get to change things. They call it markup.
Yes, so don't think even though you have looked at it that that's going to be the final bill.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, let's talk about how people get involved. Do we have some examples of where maybe things have changed because people spoke out and were more involved?
Oh, I think I'm so glad you asked that question because I have examples of this, and it's where people are not necessarily thinking of. They continually seem to think we're going to go at the very top and we're going to get change there. But no, way back when, there was a guy by the name of Branch Rickey, and he said, "You know what? I'm gonna hire the best ball players I can possibly find. People like sports, they like baseball, they wanna follow and see who the best players are." So, who did he find? He found a guy named Jackie Robinson, and people said, "Yes, we really wanna see a good ball player, the best that we have." So, it wasn't the legislation, it was just the fact that people would like to see the best ball players possible, and Jackie Robinson broke the color line. He came on the Brooklyn Dodgers. I know a little bit about this more than other people just because that was my dad's favorite team. They were the Brooklyn Bums or Brooklyn Dodgers, and he was a great baseball player as well too. The other example too is that how about entrepreneurs? Do you want to present the best possible thing that you know of? Well, people like music. Tell you by a guy by the name of Barry Gordy. He borrowed $800 from his brother and he started making records. He started a record label. And where did he start this? Selling them out of the back of his car. He opened up the trunk and he was selling records literally out of the back of his car. People love music and people want the best possible music. And here he was just an entrepreneur. He came up from almost nothing and he worked on the Ford factory line and he had a great idea. Ford is making automobiles and putting all the pieces together. So if you go to Detroit, you can see where the Motown studio is. And it says right at the very top, the Hit Factory. What Barry Gordy said is, I'm going to manufacture the best songs and the best players, the best musicians, and the best dancers I can find. He made it into a factory. So, my point here is that significant social change comes about. Why? Because people wanted it. And when people want it, something is going to happen. Sometimes the legislators are coming in at the end of the game, but significant change can happen. It's from the people, it's from the bottom up. And that's what this country is about. You want change, you become part of the change.
I love that. You got to start somewhere, right? So it starts with us. So let's make the change.
And when it happens to you, you get intimately involved, like both of us have.
You do. You do. You're really passionate about it.
Surprise, we go through the attorneys, we go through the money, and I said, there's got to be a better way. So that's what I'm hoping other people do. Jump in, you can get involved, and this is something you do. It's a legislative session on what you can do and some practical steps in the here and now, and then a longer range plan to let's get some change going.
Well, it was good conversation, Mick. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate your time. Enjoy. Until next time, this is the Aftermath signing out. Deus Volt.